It's recording.
Headphones. Everyone has used them at one point or another, whether it's on an airplane watching a movie, or maybe in the gym getting a workout done, or in a classroom doing a video assignment. Everyone has used headphones. And as headphones continue to become a growing, important part in our daily lives, the number of choices that we have at our disposal continues to grow as well. One of the many tools that we have to be able to tell whether or not a headphone is good or bad is something called a frequency response graph. However, many people don't use them either because they don't know what they are or they don't know how to read them. My name is Yeshua Fani. I'm a student here at Dallas College. I am an audiophile and part-time audio engineer, and one of my goals for today's speech is to inform you on why it's important to know what a frequency response graph is, uh, how to read a frequency response graph, and also how to tell if a frequency response is good. According to Cameron Oakley, one of the head reviewers for headphones.com, in his article, The Glossary of Audio Measurements and Design Terms, frequency response, he states that frequency response describes the difference in level of frequency in relation to one another. In other words, it describes how soft or how loud certain tones are compared to each other. He states that for headphones, frequency response is regarded as the most important for headphones. Now, part of the reason why this is the most important measurement for headphones is it shows us how the headphone will sound. And a frequency response graph gives us a visual demonstration of what a headphone sounds like before we ever use it, which means that we can tell whether we'll like something or hate something before ever spending our money on the product. Now, how do you read a frequency response graph? Right here on the y-axis, we have the volume or the level of the different frequencies. And then on the x-axis is our different frequencies. On our x-axis, we have frequencies from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000, which is the audible spectrum, or that is the part of the sound spectrum that our ears are able to hear. According to Koren Ako, also known as Critical, the creator of the biggest in-ear monitor measurement database, the frequency response, the frequencies can be broken down into 7 distinct regions. Down here, from 20 to 80 hertz is our sub bass. From 80 to 200 is our mid bass. From 200 to 800 is our lower mid range. From 800 to 15 to 1.5 thousand is our center mid range, and then from 1500 to 5000 is our upper mid range, and then from 5000 to 10,000 is our treble, and then above 10,000 is our airy region. Now, this bottom part over here, the sub bass, is known as the rumble region or the growl region. So that's where that like shaky feeling that you get when you're playing really loud bassy music in your car comes from. That's the part that causes the rumble or causes you to shake physically. That next region, the mid bass, is the part that has all the thump. So when you hear kick drums or heavy bass in music, the part that goes boom over and over would be located right there in that mid bass. Next up is our lower mid region, and this is where that lower part of the voice is the part that a lot of people like to listen to. It's considered the body of the voice. And that center mid range is where most instruments and vocals live in. That's the part where words that we understand is located. And then that upper mid range is that higher part of the voice where the higher frequencies of our voice lie in, as well as for instruments. And then next is the treble region. This is where a lot of the higher pitch sounds, like our T sounds and S sounds, lie. That's where a lot of those sharp and harsher sounds lie in. And then finally, the last part, the air region, or the 10K plus, that's where the end of a breath lies, or those airy sounds that are harder to describe and put into words. Now, how can we tell if a frequency response is good? The way that we're able to tell if a frequency response is good is through something that we call target frequencies. However, how do we know which target frequency curve we should use? Well, before we used to use something called diffuse field. However, many people had complaints with it for it being too shouty or lacking bass. In order to solve this issue, one of the lead researchers over at Harman International, Sean E. Oliver, ended up leading a research project which explored whether or not listeners could agree on what is good sound. And in his article, The Perception and Measurement of Sound Quality, the conclusion that they came to is that listeners could actually agree on what is good sound. And as a result, we got something called the Harman Target Curve. The Harman Target Curve is a frequency response that most listeners found preferable. A lot of people like to have that extra bass, like to have that extra sub bass, and then like to have a little bit more mid bass, and then as it comes down to the mids, we have like a dip right here where it's relatively flat, followed by a rise within that treble and upper mid range. This is the curve that most listeners liked, and as such, this is the same curve that most headphone companies aim for. So oftentimes we can tell if a headphone is good simply based on how well it follows the graph. Sometimes there might be some deviation from the target. So, like sometimes some headphones will have less bass or more bass, or less treble or more treble. The way that we read this graph is that we read how far off headphones deviate from the graph, and that's how we're able to tell how good a headphone will sound. For example, over here we have a headphone called the HiFiMan Sundara, and right over here is, and then this green line right here represents the HiFiMan Sundara, and then this dotted line represents the Harman Target Curve. We have a dip right here in the sub bass, which means that this is going to lack some of that rumble and some of that growl. And then as we come over here into the mid bass, there's a little bit extra, which means that this is going to have a little bit more thump. As we come right here into that mid range, that upper mid range, we have a dip right here, which means that female vocals are going to be a little bit more distant, a little bit less clear. And right here, this means that we're going to get a little bit more body and presence for male vocals. And then as you can see up here, we have some of this is going over the dotted line, which means we get some extra treble. And as a result, a lot of people like these headphones for certain genres over others. And by looking at this, we're also able to create an idea of how these might sound with different types of music, or just in general how they sound. In conclusion, frequency response graphs are one of our biggest tools in the modern day of audio gear in terms of telling what's good and what's bad. As things continue to get more and more expensive, it's very important that we as the consumer continue to use tools like these in order to better use our money, or so that we don't waste our time and money on things that we don't like. Thank you for listening.